One of the most frustrating things to deal with when getting leaner are those last 10 pounds of stubborn body fat that simply won't go away. And these are usually in the worst areas such as your lower abs or your love handles, and I've actually seen guys give up on losing this body fat because everything they've tried has completely failed. If that's you, or if you're someone doing a fat loss phase and you want to learn how to deal with this, in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 things you need to know to finally get rid of these last 10 pounds of stubborn body fat and reach your goal physique. So diving into the first thing you need to know, which is that your approach may need to become more restrictive and unsustainable for a period of time. When it comes to losing body fat, I'm a really big fan of flexibility. I like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your calories come from whole, healthy, unprocessed foods, and then 20% can come from more processed foods, eating out, packaged foods, ordering in, whatever you like. And this rule works great for long-term sustainability, but if you're stuck and you can't lose those last 8 to 10 pounds and you're not sure what to do, we may need to break this rule. And there are 2 reasons for this. First, when you look at the 80-20, the 80% side is pretty much in your control. Those are all single ingredient foods, unprocessed foods, and there's not that much variety there, so you can actually measure them out, you can track them, not a big deal. But if you look at the 20% side, this is where you're not really sure about the ingredients. The chef in the restaurant can easily add a couple of tablespoons of oil and you wouldn't even know it. And then on the other hand, you have packaged foods, which also the label can be off by up to 20%. So you're not really in control of what's going on there. So instead of the 80-20, where there's a bunch of vagueness, you could go with a 90-10 rule or 95-5 rule temporarily to tighten things up and gain more control over your food intake, because it does boil down to creating a calorie deficit. And that 20% where you're not really sure could be enough to get you out of a calorie deficit, and then you're basically stuck. Now, the second reason you might want to break the 80-20 rule is when your overall calories are quite low. With a low calorie budget, you're really dealing with trade-offs. You have to ask yourself, is it worth spending 20% of my total calories on these processed foods and indulgences if you know that you're going to be hungry and that you're going to be tempted to overeat? And on the other hand, you could spend more of those calories on fruits, vegetables, and very filling options, which might not be as appealing, but at least you're not hungry. At some point when you're dieting, it's a question: do you want to be bored or do you want to be hungry? I'd choose to be bored every single time. And I know people will say, well, there are these low-calorie recipes, Mario. You can use artificial sweeteners. And that's great if that works for you. But I've also seen that make people want to overeat, because even though the recipe is low-calorie, the food is still very tempting and delicious, and they just keep eating more and more and eventually go over their calorie budget. So I recommend, if you're having a hard time with these last 10 pounds, simplify your diet, reduce the variety, focus on a consistent routine with your food choices, with your meals, with hitting that like button, and that's going to reveal patterns, and you'll be able to see exactly what's wrong so you can make the adjustments and break through this plateau. And a lot of guys get a little bit spoiled when they're, for example, going from 26% body fat down to 18% because they're getting used to being able to make mistakes. There's a bunch of stuff happening in the weekends, there are some snacks they're not accounted for, there are some tracking errors, and they still get to their goal. But when they are at 18% body fat and want to get down to 12% body fat, then they're trying to do the same thing and it doesn't work anymore. And that's the reality. You need to be a lot more dialed in. If you miss hitting the like button once or twice, that's going to cost you a lot of progress. And some of these things that I'm talking about, tightening things up, going into a bit more restrictive of an approach, those are temporary measures. You do them knowing that they're not sustainable long term. And it's okay to do things that are not sustainable long term temporarily to hit a goal, and then later on you can move to something else. That's how being in a calorie deficit works. You run that deficit until you get to your goal, and then you go up to maintenance calories, or maybe even do a lean bulk. Now, the second thing you really need to focus on to get rid of those last 10 pounds is to double down on your accuracy. What I mean by this is that a lot of people forget that using an app like MyFitnessPal to track your calories and macros is a skill like any other. You can be really good at it, or you can be terrible at it. And what I see happen a lot is someone is going to go out, they're going to have a burger, they're going to open MyFitnessPal, and they're going to search for burger and then pick the first item that pops up. Or they're going to try to find the burger that has the lowest calories in the search results and log that. And this is how you end up in those situations where you think you're eating 1,200 calories and not making any progress. And whether this is happening consciously or unconsciously, these mistakes will cost you a lot of progress and cause a lot of frustration. And if you're down to those last 10 pounds and you're not seeing progress, precision needs to be your priority. I recommend breaking down your meals into ingredients and logging those, making sure you're weighing things out whenever possible, especially when you're at home and dealing with your staple foods and things that you eat on a regular basis. There's really no excuse for not having those accurately logged and accounted for. And you're eating out, try to overestimate a little bit. If you're losing weight too fast, you can always adjust afterwards. And if you're not sure about a certain item, you can double check it on a third-party website. One of my favorite ones is Nutrition Data Self. This is where you can search for it. You can see if the calories match with what you're seeing in MyFitnessPal, and that way you can also improve your accuracy. At the end of the day, when you're struggling with these last bits of body fat, a little bit of accuracy, a little bit of attention, more engagement really pays off to avoid the frustration and to get this done as soon as possible. Now, the third thing that becomes really important when you're dealing with these last 5 to 10 pounds is a high amount of activity. And look, I understand that diet is the most important part when it comes to losing body fat. That's how you primarily create a calorie deficit, and that's pretty clear. But there are two main issues here with having low activity levels. The first one, and most people don't know this, is that low activity levels lead to lower satiety signaling from meals, which is a really big deal when you're in a calorie deficit. So in other words, if you're increasing your activity levels, that will improve your appetite control. It will help you be fuller and help you stay in a calorie deficit. Second, because you're down to those last 10 pounds of body fat, your calories are going to be pretty low depending on how adaptive your metabolism really is. And with those low calories, now that can affect your gym performance, it can affect your overall well-being, your sleep, and general sustainability and consistency. And this is why I recommend walking 10,000 steps per day up to 15,000 steps per day when you're dealing with those last 10 pounds of stubborn body fat. This will allow you to eat more while continuing to lose body fat, which will of course improve your gym performance, which can lead to a better body composition, and in general will make the whole thing a lot more sustainable. Now, the fourth thing you need to know about losing these last 10 pounds is that it can be quite a roller coaster when it comes to measuring progress. And I've seen this firsthand. My body is generally not prone to retaining water, but still, when I'm down to those last 5-6 pounds, I can really hold on to a certain weight for multiple weeks until I see that quote-unquote whoosh effect and then finally normalize and drop down. So if I didn't trust the process, I would have freaked out and made a lot of mistakes. And we tend to forget that our bodies are primarily made out of water, and a shift of 0.5% or 1% in body water can really show up a lot on the scale. And then we have a high sodium meal, we have a bad night of sleep, there's more stress potentially, there's some travel, maybe some changes in an environment, and then we eat a higher carbohydrate meal, and of course we store 400 or 500 grams of muscle glycogen in our body, and 1 gram of glycogen stores 3 grams of water with it, so that can affect the scale a lot. Then we have our bowel movements, which can be quite irregular if you're going to a lower calorie intake despite the fiber, despite the higher water intake. So all that is to say that my recommendation is to not get emotionally attached to either the lows or the highs. It really doesn't matter what the scale says. Even if you start getting lows every single day for a whole week, it doesn't matter. You should not allow your emotional state to be controlled by the number on the scale, because as soon as you get the next high after those multiple lows, you're gonna feel bad. So in general, it's best to think of yourself as you're in data collection mode. You're looking at multiple weeks, 3 to 4 weeks of averages, and then you can start making some quality decisions. Now, the fifth thing that I have to point out is that you should be mentally prepared to lose more than 10 pounds. Based on my experience, most people underestimate their body fat percentage and they overestimate how much muscle they have. So 10 pounds quickly turns into 20, could even be 30. And if you cannot see your abs right now at all, no matter the lighting, no matter the angle, and if there's quite a bit of body fat there, it's definitely more than 10 pounds to lose. And this is why a program of getting shredded in 5 weeks or 6 weeks is really just a bunch of nonsense and marketing. And if you go into that and then you start the program 5 weeks in, you realize nowhere near the goal, that can be pretty disappointing. So it's important to have realistic expectations. Take your time, allow your body to change, do this properly. There is no rush. If you're not a competitor, what's the point of trying to force this? make sure you're making steady progress and that you also have an exit strategy. So not just reaching a goal and staying there for a day and then gaining 15 pounds in 2 weeks, but in fact, being able to stay there, remaining in control, making sure you can maintain it if you wanted to. And then if you want to settle at a different body fat percentage, again, you're in control. That's what it means to have an exit strategy and to really turn this into a lifestyle. Now, what's going to help with that is making sure you hit that subscribe button below, and notifications by hitting the bell icon. Details for coaching if you want to work with me are in the description below. Also leaving another helpful video here for you at the end. So check out that video and I'm going to see you right there.